All right, we have second semester school culture report. Who's
Mr. Mannon.
Next.
Good evening, board.
Good evening.
Mr. Mann, the Assistant Principal of Student Affairs. Today, we're going to go over 3 reports. The second semester attendance report, the student discipline report from second semester, and lastly, I'm going to give you a brief update for our participation number for extracurricular activities for second semester. We're going to give that report in a full detail at our fall goal report out. So I'll give you a little brief overview of where we're at with numbers. First, though, we want to look at the attendance report. And we're going to look at total attendance rate first for the second semester. And then we'll break down our daily student attendance in the excused and unexcused categories. So looking at the attendance report, you should note the percentages on the top of the page there. Those percentages outline the entire second semester attendance rate going back to 2013. In a review of those numbers, the semester's attendance percentage recorded out higher this semester than in previous years at 93.79%, which is amazing given that we lost our attendance secretary for about a month in March there, and we're down a full-time dean as well. So it's contributed to the efforts of Neil Dugetti, our dean, and Lori Sullivan, our assistant dean, who really helped out a lot this semester. Without those efforts, that attendance rate wouldn't be where it's at. So I want to thank them for their efforts. Moving down in review of the student absences, we took the total average percentage of students per day who were either excused, unexcused, or fell into the other category. And that other category is for students who are receiving either supported services at hospitals or intake or outtake type service programs for them. Or students on bereavement leave with funerals that they're attending or family emergencies and things like that. Overall, within the excused absence category, we saw significant declines in January, February, and April. However, in March, we rose from 89.5% last year to an average of 95.3 students per day that were excused in that month. I know that was a question that came up, so we looked back at the data for that month, and we saw about 100 more families took vacation early, cheaper airfare and things like that this year, as well as we had a little bit of a sickness going on in the building and a rise in college visits at that time, so that brought our numbers a little bit up there at that point. Moving on here, for the semester, 81.3% of the students were excused, which is down from 86.4%. So overall, we were down a little bit, which was a success. For unexcused, here. Looking at the unexcused absences, we were slightly higher each month, second semester, with a rate of 14.8%.
Numbers or percent?
Average per day.
Yeah,
Sorry, per students, excuse me.
Okay.
It flips in this category.
I know, yeah.
And there's several factors for each of those categories going up a little bit. Again, we were without our attendance assistant for the month of March. Again, we were without the dean who really tracks unverified marks and things like that. And then we had 200 students who invoked in a sit-in, and so that all those students were marked unexcused during that. And there was 3 periods that was held. So overall, students per day were down. We're up a little bit, 14.8 from 10.1 in the unexcused absence category. In the other category, we were down a little bit, and that's average per day, and the overall semester average was 5.8 compared to 7.4 last year. Moving into tardies, tardies were calculated average per period each day for students arriving late after the bell. At semester's end, percentages were higher at 16%, up from 13% last year. I do want to mention that in previous years, teachers were tasked with coding tardies in their classrooms, so they would stop what they would do, mark their tardy, continue on with their teaching. Last year, we invoked the HERO system, which pretty much took that away from them. So we have 5 security guards, 4 on the floor at any time. They have mobile devices, and when students are late, teachers close the door, they find security, and they're on each floor. They tag them with the HERO pass. That's their entry into class, and so it's a more consistent way of tracking tardies. So a couple factors why this is higher. We're really consistent with it now, especially in our morning procedures and then throughout the day. But also construction has been a nightmare around here. So the majority of our tardies we're seeing for first period. And you're really seeing a decline in the amount of students that are in our hallways throughout the school day, which is great. So, we continue to work on our first period tardies. Not having busing does hinder us in getting students to class and to school first hour. But that's why those marks are a little bit higher. We do expect those marks to go down as this system is integrated into our school and continues to be something that we push. So it's been a great system for us, and it's given us really consistent data. And just a side note on that, we're not only using Hero for attendance or tardies, we're also tracking it for bathroom checks. So security will go on there and make sure the bathrooms are okay. They'll tag that, so it gives us a timestamp on when they're in there, so we can cut down on any graffiti that's going on in there or any behaviors that shouldn't be going on in the bathrooms. We also use it for events such as prom or blood drives and things like that. So it's been a really good system for us, and I think we have schools now contacting us, and there's actually a tech blog that's being written about the program that we're using here. So it's pretty innovative and progressive, and we're pretty excited about that. So getting back here to this, those are the tardies. There are 10-minute late tardies as well. Those have been going down, which is good. So we see about 10-minute average per day is about 2. Which is great from where we're at previously.
Explain again what's a 10-minute tardy versus...
Any student that's arriving to class after 10 minutes.
Okay.
So there might have been an emergency where the kid, had to go somewhere and they didn't have a pass, and then they'd go to class. Well, we'd give them a tag for a 10-minute late, and that's what that is. So really, we're not seeing a lot of that in the building. Just a note on our overall ADA this year, if you want to look down at the bottom. Semester 1 attendance was 94.6. The Cubs parade really hurt us. About 600 students helped that day. Semester 2, again, 93.7, which is down, up from last year. Overall, we're a little bit down at 94.2 compared to 94.3 from last year. But looking at historically the past couple of years, we're really on an uprise with our attendance. With a full staff next year, I think we can really hit that 95% goal mark with the district laid out for us. So that's something we preach every day, and our deans are on top of. And I know with the full staff and some of the things that we're doing, I think we're almost right there. And again, that goes to the funding from the state, and the more students we can bring in the door and be here, obviously the more funding we get from the state. So. Some things that have helped us procedures this year, we completed 31 home visits this semester. That would be if students are not attending school, we'll go to their home. This would be after multiple attempts, either through conversations on the phone or in-person meetings. Our last attempt is, okay, let's go to the home site and see what's going on here. And more often than not, that solves the problem, where the parents really welcome to see us there and appreciates us, and then that's usually a motivator to get their student to school. The Riverside Police Department wrote 18 truancy tickets, and we continued our discipline committee. It's something that I started last year with our staff, and several of our staff from other departments are involved there. I know this is a question as well. Outcomes from those conversations included students we have a hallway restriction program. So if students have 12 or more tardies, they're put on hallway restriction, which basically means they can't get a pass out of class unless it's for an emergency, and then they would be escorted by security. In those situations, if the student they can go into passing periods, but if they're late and they get a tardy, we escort them. Security now escorts them to class, so they can't just linger in the hallway. And so that's an outcome from the discipline committee, as well as there's problems with dress code and teachers. As a teacher and a former teacher, I always had a problem like, how am I going to stop class and then address a hat or a hood or something like that? It takes away from the instruction what we're doing. So. We did a reporting simple email form now that comes down. So if you're a male addressing a female or vice versa, you don't have to go into that situation. You email the dean's office, we call the student down and address the situation there. And so that's an outcome that came from the discipline committee too, that was great. So we're going to continue to address those culture concerns with our staff going forward, and that's more of a monthly meeting that we'll hold and take place going forward here with that. So that's our attendance report. Do we have any questions?
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you track staff attendance?
Yes.
And do we have any numbers on that?
Not with me.
Okay.
That's something that we could put together.
Okay.
not staff attendance, but for like students, one thing we did do this year as well is my assistant each period, she would look and see what students were not in class, and then we would either like call or say, what's going on, with those students, and let's get them in the building.
I think she's looking for teacher attendance
For
rate.
teachers and
Yeah.
everybody else in the building.
Sure.
We don't track that for the
You
board,
don't.
though. We have a HR report that would pull that, but we don't report out on that on an annual basis.
Okay.
That's not one of the incentives that the board has for these guys in their daily duties.
Gotcha.
Dave, I have a question.
Yeah.
How is this policy communicated to the parents, I guess especially first time when they're freshmen? And is there a way to get feedback from parents on what we're doing?
Yeah, you know what? This is something that came up a couple years ago in this report, and that I just noticed. And it's something that I think has kind of been put on the shelf, and it's something that we need to bring up again. And so I think going forward, especially for second semester, and maybe now come out of our discipline committee, we could put maybe a Google form or something together where we get the perception of where we're at with everything with our parents. We have a freshman welcome night that we review all of our policies and procedures with them at that point, but it's a limited time. You only have 5 minutes, Other than that, we're pushing out more communication this year. We're doing a video for drop-offs, pickups, and things like that. So that might be an opportunity where we can also push out some information. And then feedback, they do the 5 essential survey every other year. And that was just completed as well. So I think we could do a little bit more on our end at the end of each semester to see where we're at. And so that's something that we'll be glad to present at the semester's end in the winter.
I have a question. Do you find any one day, like late attendance day, is a higher percentage of
Yes.
kids being late?
Yes.
Not?
Yeah, absolutely.
On Thursdays, you come in late day, right? The more kids are late that day.
Yeah, and we've cut that down a little bit with tracking them through Hero, because now every time they're late, they get something, and every third action is a consequence. And so now there's some teeth to what we're doing with the tardy system. So that has cut down our first period tardies considerably on Thursdays, but we do see an uptick in students coming in late, because if you think about it, it's an hour later, parents are at work, student has all the opportunity to sleep in, especially if there's no busing. And so we do see that a little bit. And that's something that in our grade level assemblies we address as well.
Sake of time, Dave, can you go on to discipline?
Okay, this is our suspension report from last year, and it reviews alcohol, drug, fight, disruptive behavior, gang theft, weapon possession, noncompliance, and other behaviors, which are like computer violations or cell phone violations, things like that, and those are all actionable suspensions that we track. Overall, we enjoyed much success this semester, as 34 students were suspended for 36 offenses, which is down from 61 and 64 last year. So we cut our suspension numbers in half this semester. Major areas of improvement from last year at this time were the amount of fights, which was cut in half to 9. Inappropriate or non-compliance category was down from 22 to 12. One area that stayed consistent was the drug possession category. We had 9 students suspended in that category. To curb that, we actually had a meeting with Megan Egan, a director of outreach at Rosecrans today, just to kind of see where we're at and how we can be proactive with pushing out some information to our kids and to our parents about supported programs there. And they just opened an office in LaGrange, which is really accessible to our students. So we have some things in the works for next year on that. A couple notes as well. Instead, in lieu of suspension, we're kind of free to utilize our alternative days assignment room. And in there, we really started to do some restorative work through worksheets where students can reflect back on their behavior, and then there's some incentives with them completing that in the time they get out of in school. So that's been really well, and then that's some documentation for our staff to go back and look at, especially our counselors or deans, and maybe point to a trigger and what's getting at their behavior. So that's something that's been working out really well. I think the visibility with our staff outside of the school at the end of the day, and at the door in the front of the, in front of the school in the morning drop-offs, as well as our continued relationships and conversations with our special education department and our counselors has really helped really cut down our overall numbers. And one thing we did this year too is we met with all of our transfer students on a quarterly basis, because we saw previously that half of our fights came from our transfer students, not interfeeder programs. So this year, myself and Laura Sullivan met with those students on a quarterly basis just to see where they're at, link them up with some staff, either extracurricular opportunities or just a staff member they can go to feel comfortable. So that was a success. So overall numbers are way down this year in that category and suspensions.
Dave, how much of it is based on this alternate option you have instead of a suspension? Because, I mean, that's a pretty dramatic change, which, of course, is a good thing. But is it a lot significantly because you gave this alternate choice or alternate opportunity or however you would phrase that?
Yeah, I think because of the new Public Act, we had to modify the way we were doing things a little bit, but not a lot because I knew this was going to happen anyway. So my first year here, we really did that anyway.
Okay.
So it's not that much of a difference.
So actually just was a good semester for behavior.
It was a year. Overall, the year was great. Okay. So
Did we just lose some bad actors? Did we luck out like that?
Yeah. I mean, overall, though, in the culture in the school, really good kids here at RB. And you have some bad choices every so often, but I think the efforts by our staff, who's visible in our hallways, each period really cuts down. When you have 5 security, it kind of hinders what we do and how far we can reach. But when the staff can get in there and help out with their visibility in the CAF and in the hallways, it's really a plus for us. And so we're thankful for their efforts too. So.
Time for questions or
Discipline or activity?
the discipline?
Okay, go ahead.
Now, looking at the drug possession, just reading the newspaper, once a year approximately, we have the dogs come in from the Riverside Police Department. Just being a parent, I've heard things like the system's rigged, like the kids know about it. I mean, is that true? And is there something maybe we can do about it? Because, no one should have the drugs in the school.
Sure.
And it seems to me it's zero hits for 5 years in a row. It just seems a little unusual. I don't know the stats, but
I can tell you.
that's what the impression the community has. And if it's not true, then...
Yeah, I'll preface that by saying, when I was a dean, for 3 years we didn't have any hits at a high school that had 2,600 students. And so I think sometimes I think the students aren't bringing stuff in because they know when they come here, if we catch them, they're going to get arrested 100%. And also the type of drug that a student may be under the influence of or possessing is a little bit different now too. No longer are we seeing a lot of the the marijuana cases and things like that. We're seeing more of the prescription stuff, and that's a little bit harder for a dog to pick up too. But to your question, the only way that word would get out is if there's an officer that is working, a handler that has a dog that knows someone that's in school here, a relative or whatnot, and so that's the only way because we keep that pretty buttoned up.
But if I recall Dr. Skinkus answering the question a little differently last year, the dogs are not allowed to
Search
sniff
kids.
the kids themselves.
Correct.
So if they know the dogs are there and they have contraband, they put it on their person instead of leaving it in their locker, and we would never be able to determine whether they had it.
Yeah, and the way it's set up here, we do a blanket search of the whole building. So it's a shelter-in-place situation where students are confined to their classroom, and then we bring the dogs in. We haven't been successful for that, but in another situation, we would do random checks on a monthly basis with our local dog, and that's really unannounced and random for the hallways that we pick, and they didn't search particular students or anything like that. But we didn't get any hits on that either. So I don't know.
Of these 9 drug cases, what's the breakout of the type of drugs? Do you know the breakout of what was?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of it's marijuana, and what we're seeing and talking to Rosecrans too, and they're seeing the same thing. The alcohol numbers are going way down across the board, and what we're seeing is marijuana wax, in the e-cigarettes, and we're also seeing an increase in prescriptions, like Xanax, anti-anxiety stuff.
So of the 9 that you find, is it usually because somebody determines the child either smells marijuana on them or that they're high, can visibly see they're high?
Correct, and we have.
Is that how you usually find out?
Yeah, and we have an anonymous reporting form too. So if a teacher's in class, instead of calling an alert to it, she'll send us a quick message, and then we'll call that student down.
Are you able to say, based on your experience, do you think our drug problems are better, worse, or the same as other schools, similar city schools?
I think 9 cases is phenomenal, and so I think we're doing a really good job here overall. And having Rosecrans on board too, to counsel out, because that's a restorative practice that we have as well.
Sure.
So when these students are, caught or under the influence or what have you, they're referred out right away to Rosecrans and their services. So.
Activities.
Yeah, so this is the fun part of the job. We have close to 40 clubs and activities that we offer here. If you look at the bottom, the total participation numbers for this year, and it's not individual, it's just students that are participating. So we didn't break it out. If they're in 3 things, we didn't that's a report that we're going to do in the fall for you. This is more just who's participating in what club, and overall, 1,243 students up from. If you look back from 2011, we had 642. We almost doubled it in that time, and we rose almost 300 students from last year. And we added a lot of clubs as well. I mean, if you look at the bottom, fashion club, gaming club, Hasaba, lacrosse was a big addition this year, and that's going to continue to grow that program. And we're looking to add. We're really excited. We're teaming up with the first group and their robotics. And so that'll increase our STEM programming here, which is really needed. And so that's already up and running. And we have a volunteer sponsor on board here, hopefully soon. And we have other things coming. So participation numbers are up. Best Buddies really grew their program last year from 165 to 191. The Clarion, our newspaper, which is great. They doubled their numbers. 22 was last year and 52 this year. And their movement is both online, through social media, and through, they're still producing a newspaper for our students, which is really cool. So Mark Helgeson is doing a fantastic job as a sponsor there in his second year. National Honor Society is something I'm really excited about. Grew from 67 to 84, so we're inducting more of our honor students into that society. And what's really cool, Juan Tinoco, our Spanish sponsor, said, hey, I want to increase the amount of students we have in this program. Let's make this an honor society. I'm like, absolutely, make sure you do the work on your end. So we adopted that. We're a Spanish honor society here now, and we had 24 last year, and that grew to 51. Wow. So that's a unique program that we're offering. And then lastly, our spring musical, I can't say enough about, what Aubrey's doing with their program and bringing in the community and involving them and growing our cast. And so overall this year with participation, really, really great year, and we'll continue to grow that going forward.
Let me ask just one club. Although I see it's varied, the African American club went way down, and I know at one point I don't remember if we got an email or something. The question was that we didn't have a African American staff member as a sponsor.
We had an African American staff member that was sponsoring it, and then they went on a leave.
Right.
And then we had some issues filling that for the rest of the year.
Okay. Is there something we can do for next year for that club?
Just things that we've done at the end of the semester. Like right at the end of the semester, we had an open mic night. They had a movie night, and we just had a sponsor come on board in April.
Okay.
So she's ramping that effort up again, and so I think we'll be on a good path here going forward next year with that program.
Can I ask, why is hockey not a club? Because I had asked earlier. I mean, there are kids that participate that they have a table set up for We Are B night.
Yeah, it's kind of like our tech program and our student athletic trainers, where it's more of like an outside program, especially hockey, because hockey's not housed in the building here. It's not supported by a staff member. from RB.
It's not just all RB students on that hockey team.
It's I think it's a co-op with NAS and.
I see.
I see.
But we do have a significant amount of students in that as well.
Now, Dave, you came from Bartlett. When I was the principal at Bartlett, you weren't there when I was there, but we did something similar. We let them wear their jerseys,
Yes.
we put them in the announcements,
Yes.
acknowledge them in an assembly when we did this.
You're doing that now.
But we didn't, I don't believe they received any district funding.
No, yeah, they were teamed up with Streamwood and maybe another high school as well. So,
You see more funding for hockey at a private school than you do at a public school, except a couple public schools that offer it or allow it. We'd have to figure that out if we want to put them on the 2-year volunteer cycle and then eventually
Well, I
look
mean,
for
you have
activity
kids that
money.
participate in hockey who might not participate in others. That would boost your number.
They're all going to lacrosse.
Right? Yeah.
But
You're right.
yeah, you do, the hockey, RB's going to have the most kids on that hockey club this upcoming year.
you had a large freshman group that were involved in the program over there, I know. So, something we can look at.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you.